Hello and welcome back to Sustainability Natters. I'm Elliot.
I'm Beth.
Today we're joined by the Head of Waste Management for the Compass Group /ESS. Andy, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. So tell us about you. How did you end up in the waste management field?
Oh, that is a long story. I'll go back to the very beginning because I'm ex-military, so I think that's relevant to today's conversation. I spent the first 5 years of my working life in 1st Battalion of Parachute Regiment, but then left, stumbled around a little bit and literally fell into waste management. And that was a good 20 years ago, and I've never escaped. It's an industry that kind of holds you in there, and the more experience you get, the more you enjoy it, and the more it's evolving. So that's how I got into waste.
Yeah, awesome. I know we've been speaking for a bit this morning, and I can really feel the passion coming off you for all
Yes.
things waste management and recycling. So I'm looking forward to today. Andy, why is recycling important, and what happens if we get it wrong?
Well, our planet doesn't have an infinite amount of resource. So we've got to manage it. And of course, when it comes to sustainability, which is the whole podcast series, it is vitally important. We can't just throw things away. We can't continue living in a disposable society. We will run out of things. So we need to protect it for ourselves and our future generations. So that's why it's important.
Yeah, of course. And there's lots of talk about sustainability, recycling and all things that goes with it. How have perceptions changed over the years with regards to recycling? Are we getting better at it?
Yes, slowly, not fast enough. I mean, the industry has completely changed. I remember when I was a kid, the dustman would turn up and everything would go into one bin. You'd have your old metal bin outside, dustman would turn up, put it on his shoulder, hoof it into the back of a dust cart and off it went. There was no mention of recycling at all. But at that stage, we weren't throwing as much away. We would repair things. Mm-hmm. So if something broke, you'd look to fix it first. Now, oh, it's broken, I'll throw it away and I'll go and buy another one. That's the mentality that hasn't progressed, whereas the industry has progressed to be able to offer more and more recycling. So on one hand, things have moved quite rapidly, but on the other hand, our approach to it has almost gone backwards, that we're just seeing things as sort of just disposable. So I just won't think about recycling it or think about repairing it or anything like that.
I think we're all guilty of that to an extent as well. I know I've had clothes. My nan very much when I was younger, a stitch in time saves 9.
Yeah.
And but when I was younger would just throw clothes away and buy new ones, because as well, like with the advent of fast fashion, people can just buy. How do we get people out of that mindset?
If I had the answer to that, I'd be very rich.
Very true. Very
Well,
true.
hopefully you're going to tell us in a minute.
Yeah, well, it's a long process of culture change. There's no big bang. You can't just go whack, there you go, and everything will be sorted. So what you'll see, and I know we're going to come across it a bit later with simpler recycling, is there's a staged process to get people to change the culture of how they view recycling, how they view sustainability. But it's a long process, and we're only at the sort of still the beginnings of that journey. We've got a long way to go.
Okay, and so obviously you work on the defence estate.
Yes.
What is the situation like at across the defence estate as we currently are? Are we good at it?
Yes, but could do better. I think it's like my old school reports.
Yeah.
Yes, good, but could do it. So there's a foundation there.
Yeah.
So you go on to any military site in the UK and you have the option to recycle. Is it being utilised to its fullest? No. And a lot of that will come, and I know we're going to pick on this a lot later, is personal responsibility. So yes, there is certainly room for improvement across the whole estate.
Well,
Sorry, Beth, go.
I was just going to say, obviously, you've mentioned about personal responsibility. We can talk about that now.
Yes.
So, obviously, as you've said before, and we've kind of had a discussion this morning, but when you've got waste in your hand, you have that decision to make.
Yes.
How do we get into people's heads and help and support them with making that decision, making the correct decision?
I think there's two things. People have got to stop thinking about a bin as just a bin, and they've got to realise that they can make a difference. So there's a conscious decision to be made. When you've finished with whatever it is, whether that's a can of Coke or a piece of paper or whatever, you have, at that point, you are making it a waste stream, because you are saying, I don't need this anymore, I'm going to throw it away. Okay. But at that point, you've got the conscious decision to make, is it going to be general waste or is it going to be recycled? So when you go to your bin or bins, hopefully, you have a choice. You have your general waste bin, you have your mixed recycling bin. In some areas, you have your paper and card, you have your food, you have your glass, etc., etc. You have a choice. What you need to do is make the right choice. You know what you've got in your hands, and put it in the right bin. It can be that simple, and it should be that simple. But if you just see a bin as a bin, then it's never going to work.
And
No.
what are the impacts if people are putting things in the wrong bin? What's the real picture of that?
I know we briefly touched on it earlier, so we'll start slowly and get into the dirty elements of it later. I mean, firstly, there's an environmental impact, because once you put something in the general waste bin, it's not going to get recycled. So if you put your can of Coke in the general waste bin, it's not going to get pulled out. It's going to go and it's going to get incinerated. So it's lost. It's waste. It's gone. Whereas if you put it in the mixed recycling bin, it'll go down the picking line and it'll get pulled off by the various technologies. But what people need to understand is that at the very beginning of that picking line for mixed recycling, there's a human element of it. There's a picking line where people are going along the conveyor belt and picking out the big bulky bits of waste or things that shouldn't be in there, things that are going to affect the picking line further down. So one of my frustrations is when I'm walking around the defence estate, for example, which is quite open to having dogs on site, etc., and I see dog poo bags in mixed recycling bins. That I know will impact the pickers on the picking line, but it's also the mentality of people that will go, I don't care. And those are the people we need to impact, because most people in the country, they understand we need to protect the environment, but it can be ruined by the 10, 20% that don't care. And those are the ones we need to influence, to make them understand that they have something in their hand and they need to make the right choice to put it in the right bin.
Yeah.
And I guess a lot of that does come down to personal responsibility. We're all responsible for looking at that thing that's in our hand, as you say, and picking which bin it goes into.
Yes.
Now, it can be really confusing depending on what you've got in your hand to know which bin to put it in.
Yes.
I think my mum and dad, where they live, they've got 4 wheelie bins in the garden now. So putting the rubbish out there, takes a good 20 minutes as you're sorting it out.
Yes.
So having the knowledge and understanding of where to put things is absolutely critical.
Yes.
Now, what are the biggest areas of confusion do you think people have got? And, what have we done in the past to try and resolve that?
Dare I mention it, coffee cups. I think that's the biggest one, because there are coffee cups out there that can be recycled, but there's also a lot of coffee cups out there that can't be. But the average person in the street won't know the difference between the two. They won't read the label, or sometimes there's a bit of greenwashing, et cetera, et cetera. So it is confusing. And I know we've done, we do test tips all the time. The industry does test tips to see what people are throwing away.
Yeah.
And you will see as we do it, there's probably an equal amount of coffee cups in a mixed recycling bin as they are in a general waste bin, because there is genuine confusion. Is this a product I can recycle or not? So you get it in both bins. So in essence, yes, coffee cups can be recycled, but they need to be segregated first. Because if you put them in a mixed recycling process, remember I mentioned the picking line and everything going along the conveyor belt, no one's going to be picking out coffee cups. It's not going to happen. There's no machine that can pick out coffee cups. It's got to happen at source. And I know we're going to discuss it later with simpler recycling. Simpler recycling is based around getting a cleaner waste stream at source so it can be recycled, and we don't have to use the element of picking lines further down the line, which is then it's all pushed together, it's contaminated, it's a mess. We've got to make it cleaner at the point where it becomes a waste stream.
Yeah, and I'm interested in the bin tips that you spoke about. I know that it's a done thing in the industry. We've done some as well. Dog poo, I wasn't expecting that to come up on the list of things that you find
External
in
bins,
recycling bin.
not internal.
External bins. Yeah, we'll get that in there. But what are the culprits, does the industry see, in the wrong bin? What things are really...
Electronics. Happening? Electronics have been banned for quite some time to go into your standard bins. But we still see a lot of electronics, and the danger with that is the battery element of it, because they explode and they create fires. And you will see quite regularly on the news, and we've had it on the defence estate, where trucks catch fire because people are putting batteries in the bins. And what they need to understand is when that bin internally goes to externally and the truck comes in and tips the bin into the truck, it's compressed. And that causes a reaction, causes a battery to split, whatever, and it spark. And it's basically in with a lot of other combustible material. So you get a massive fire. And if you think, Guy Fawkes Night, you've got a few pallets around and the heat and how quickly that catches fire. Now imagine that with 10 tons of waste. So it's very, very dangerous and very costly to the industry. So that's a main thing we need to avoid putting in bins. And on every MOD site, if you're in any doubt of what should go into what bin, and especially around electronics, just go and ask the QM. There's a waste management plan for every military site in the UK that says every single waste stream listed and a route to disposal for that waste stream. So if in doubt on a military site, you ask your QM, I've got this battery, I've got this whatever, which bin should it go in? They'll be able to look it up and they'll be able to deal with it for you.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, no, a lot of places I've seen it in pubs and stuff. They've got collections for batteries that you can do, and they do it properly. So as someone like at home, if you can't make it to one of them, what should you do with old batteries?
So your local municipal site should have a battery scheme. Also, lots of shops. So you're going to your Sainsbury's, you'll see there's battery collection points. Vapes are another key one because obviously there's batteries in some of the vapes as well.
Course, yeah.
That's again, disposable society that we talked about earlier. Vapes are disposable. I know they're looking at getting rid of them, but again, it's going into the bins. It's getting compressed. It's igniting. But yes, they're not. It takes a little bit of effort, but there are options to dispose of pretty much everything anyway. You just need to look for it.
Yeah, but I mean, if it stops massive fires, which potentially putting lives at risk, it's worth going to Sainsbury's and putting it in the bin.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
Indeed. So I'm interested to understand, Andy, so if we think about the defence estate, we have parts of that fall into all four corners of the UK and overseas. And, I touched on the fact that my parents and their local authority have a different rule on what can be recycled, what can't. And obviously we have devolved governments across the UK as well. How do we address the fact that we will have different rules and regulations depending on where sites fit within the UK?
It is challenging because, as you mentioned, there is no blanket rule of one thing is the same in every single area. And now we have a slight mixture with simpler recycling. On the commercial estate, there's one rule, and on the domestic side of the parade square, there's another rule. Councils are the same. Some councils will offer one solution, some councils will offer another. So it's a very confusing message. But I come back to what I said originally, that the bin you're going to put it in will be labelled. There will be an indicator of what can and can't go into that bin. So at that point, you have a choice to make the right thing. It might be different per area, but there'll still be a solution no matter where you are. You just got to look for it.
That's good to know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess there's different answers to this depending on who you ask. Sorry, but if you're not sure which bin to go in, is there what should we do? Where should we put it?
Well, keeping it on the defence estate for now, like I mentioned, if it's electronic, you need to be speaking to your QM. If it's a battery or anything like that. If it's a typical thing like your coffee cup, knowing how the system works further down the line, if you don't have the opportunity to segregate that coffee cup at the point where you're throwing it away, it should really go in general waste. But there are lots of things around at the moment where people are trialing different coffee cup solutions. So, and this is the confusion. Even the industry is confused over how we solve this problem. The solution is source segregation. If you've got enough of one thing and it's clean, there's not a lot you can't do with it. You can recycle it, but it's getting it at the point where it becomes a waste stream and keeping it clean, i.e. no liquids in it, and you've tipped the liquids out, et cetera, et cetera. So in essence, I can't really answer that question because it is quite subjective. It depends where you are, what it is in your hand. Because like I mentioned, some coffee cups can be recycled, some can't because they're wax lined and there's nothing you can do with them. So there isn't, and that is the problem, there is no definitive answer at the moment. But this is the journey that the whole industry, hopefully the whole country is on. We are trying to get better at this, but it takes time.
So I guess it comes back to that personal responsibility piece.
Yes.
We all need to be making that conscious decision.
Yes.
This item I've got in my hand, where do I put it? And if I'm not sure, go and find out rather than just, sticking it in the recycling bin because it's the nearest one to us.
Absolutely. Because over time you will see there will be coffee cup recycling solutions.
Okay.
There will be there. So just look. If it's there, use it. If it's not there, you can't. But the longer we go on, the longer the journey goes on, you will see more and more solutions come out there across the whole of the UK, not just the defence estate, because this is a journey that we're all having to take, no matter where we work.
Okay, well, that's good to know. It's good to know. So we've mentioned it a lot, simply recycling. I understand it's an initiative that came in, I think it was the 31st of March, was it this year?
Yes.
What is it? Tell us all about it.
Well, what have you heard about it? I'll throw that question back at you.
Yeah, of course. Beth, I don't know about yourself, but Not a lot, if I'm honest. I'm going a little bit blind.
And that is the problem. It is a nationwide, a English-wide legislation that hasn't actually been overly well publicised, and it's already live. So it should be exactly as it says on the tin, to coin a very old catchphrase. It should be simple recycling. So you have your products, so you have your food, your general waste, your mixed recycling, or paper and card, depending on if it's financially, economically, environmentally beneficial to do it, and you have your glass. So you have your 4 waste streams, but you don't know about it, which is the first stage of trying to change a culture. You've got to make people aware of it. You've got to communicate it. And the fact that the whole of the England is now under this legislation, yet very few people know about it, is where it's going to go wrong. So it's a big challenge. It's done with the best intentions, but it's going to be difficult for everyone, because domestically that's not going to happen for another year's time, and it probably should have come the other way around. It should have come domestically first, where everyone is impacted, because we were talking about it earlier. Yeah. There's nowhere in the UK where you just have a general waste solution at home. There's options already. So you need to build on the domestic element and then bring that into the workplace, rather than, as it is at the moment, the other way around, where it's built commercially and then we take that domestically. It's kind of, in my mind, in my opinion, a little bit back to front. But it is what it is, and we will go with it, and we're going to be meeting the Defence Estates obligations with compliance on that.
Now, hopefully that will, the intention obviously is that it's going to make it easier.
Yes.
But I was just thinking, because there's the only place I can really think of where it's kind of been made easy like that, and it's a really silly example, but fast food restaurants seem to be really good at it, because they tell you, pour your liquids in here, put your paper in here, put your this in here, put your lids of the drink that you've had in here. And so is it going to make it more like that? It's so simple, of put this here, this here, this here, and basically telling you what to do.
I guess it removes the element of thought, that, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In essence, yes. As I was driving up here yesterday, I saw one of the new style of bins at a service station, and it had the separate compartments. It had food, it had general waste, had mixed recycling, it had somewhere for your liquids. It was all there. And then I looked in the bins, in the top of them. It's one of the sad things you do when you spend your life in waste management. And I did take a photo as well, but it was the same product in each bin. That is the problem. It's changing the culture, which is why I asked if you'd heard of what simpler recycling is, and you said no. You can put anything out there bin-wise. If people just simply aren't thinking about doing the right thing, that's the challenge. That's what we need to get to, and that's the kind of golden nugget. If we can get people to change their perception of waste and think of it as resource, as they're doing something for sustainability, for the environment, we will get there. But at the moment, we're not quite there yet.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we'll come back to behavioural change and what we've done as an organisation to prepare and what you've done to help us. But thinking about simple recycling now, noting the commercial side of things that's been prioritised over the domestic, what does it mean for me as an individual right now?
On the MOD sites,
Yeah.
It's a mixed message.
Okay.
Because you will wake up in your accommodation where you're paying council tax, and you will not be applicable till March next year.
Okay.
You'll put on your uniform, you'll walk across your parade square, and it's live already. So on those sites where you see the tea rooms, anywhere where there's food being produced, you will see food caddies. You will see external food and glass bins, because that has to be, for compliance, segregated at that point. So you will see a very mixed message just on one site. And it's the same, whether you're at a university, I know obviously we're talking about the defence estate, but whether at the university as well, it's the same thing. You've got your domestic accommodation, and then you go into your lecture theatre, and they have to be compliant, but where you sleep, you don't. So it's mixed, and that is a challenge when it comes to communicating these things. And maybe why there hasn't been that sort of overall message published by the government is because it is hard. It's very, very difficult. There is no simple solution, although it's simpler recycling.
So is the hope then that we'll change the mindsets of people in the commercial space, in the workplace, and they'll take that into their domestic settings? So before the legislation comes in, we're already part of the way there, and people are are further on that journey with recycling at home?
I think they're going to have to by default.
Yep.
But I think it's also more around the councils not being ready for it yet.
Right.
So there's several exemptions out there for councils that know they have to get this by next year that are already saying we're not ready, we can't do it. It's going to cost too much. We haven't got the infrastructure, et cetera, to deliver this. So I think it's by default, it's had to happen this way round. Otherwise, we'd be waiting years for it to happen, and then we'd be losing all this resource in the meantime. So it's probably been right to do it now. But in an ideal world, which is easy to say in hindsight, it potentially should have gone the other way around, even if we did have to wait. There's no right or wrong answer. It's difficult. It's very, very difficult.
And in your opinion, how do we get the people, like you've said, it's the people that we're trying to target are the people who just see a bin as a bin. How do we change that mindset?
Again, if I had the answer to that.
It's the $1 million question, really, isn't it?
It
Or
is.
how can we try to get that out?
It's taking them on a journey. It's making them understand that what they have. I mean, years ago, there used to be the adverts on the TV where you had the can of Coke. Then I think it was Eddie Izzard, and it was doing the voiceover, and it turned into an aeroplane. Do you remember
I
that?
remember that,
Yeah.
You said that.
But that's real. That can of Coke will potentially become another can of Coke, but you're using that resource again.
Yeah.
And it comes back to the waste hierarchy. You're not throwing it away. We're not having to deplete the earth of its minerals to be able to drink a can of Coke. If we have to do that, there's something fundamentally wrong. We should be reusing things. We're kind of doing it with milk bottles already. So I think, I'm going to use rough figures here, but I think 2/3 of the UK's milk bottles are recycled, which is a huge, huge percentage. That's what we should be doing. Those are the figures we should be bounding around, saying, look, there's a reason you are recycling. It's because we want to reuse this and create a more sustainable environment to live in.
Yeah, and what benefits does that have for the world as a whole? Obviously, like you say, we're not using using as much resource, but are there any other benefits? Does it affect like global warming? Does it affect that, or?
I think it's a nicer environment to live in. You drive anywhere these days and you see the amount of litter on the side of the roads. It's awful.
Yeah,
It's really, really bad because people don't think. They're just discarding things, disposable mentality. So one thing that will hopefully impact that, if we're talking about future legislation and the path we're going on with the journey of changing culture, is in the future we're going to have a deposit return scheme. It's already live in Ireland, Southern Ireland. So neither of you I don't think are old enough, but when I was a kid, your bottle of lemonade would have 10 pence value. So you drink your bottle of lemonade, you take it back to the shop and you get 10 pence back. Same process. So for glass and for cans, what will happen is you're going to find a 20p a can charge associated with that in addition to what you pay normally.
Yep.
And then reverse vending, when you finish with it, rather than throwing it in the bin, or as some people do, leaving it in the park or throwing it out the window of the car, you take it back, you get your money back.
That's a great idea.
Exactly, because it puts a value associated with what you have in your hand. Some people do already react to that value being a sustainability one. Brilliant, fantastic. But some people will hopefully react to it being a financial one, where you'll say, okay, that 6-pack or whatever is now worth £1.20 or whatever, and they'll take it back to the shop. Hopefully. If they don't, there'll be plenty of people going, 20p, 20p, 20p.
Yeah.
You'll find people with bags loading aluminium cans and bottles into it and taking it to the shop themselves.
Yeah.
So
I've seen that in some countries before, where people, actively go out and find the plastic bottles that have been dropped, collect them up and go and take it somewhere and get a bit of money back for it.
it has a value. It's a commodity.
Really
and that's how we need
incentivises
to,
them.
we need to look at it. It's not about changing culture. It's a commodity. We need to utilize it in that way and not seeing it as waste. And that, I think we skipped over it a little bit earlier, but how I've seen the industry change. It's changed from waste to resource. Now I've got the legacy job title of head of waste management, but you put resource in the job title and everyone thinks you're HR. So it's it's difficult. But that's the biggest thing I've seen change in my time within the industry. It used to be just waste, and now it's resource management, sustainability management. Hence the reason for all these podcasts. That's the future.
Yeah. And talking about the future, is there anything on a personal level, as someone who is very knowledgeable on waste and has a very successful career
Set me up
doing
to fail
that,
here. What are you going to ask me?
what are you personally excited for the future in terms of waste management?
The fact we're on a journey. I think. There is a clear journey, a defined journey, and there's going to be some ups and downs in it. Like I said earlier, personally, I would have done simple recycling domestically first, but ups and downs. But there is a definite journey, and we're on it, and it's going to work. We've just got to give it time and give it some nudges in the right places, starting with the fact we need to communicate better. Because as I said, what do you know about simple recycling? Nothing. That's wrong. Not from your point of view, but there should be a message out there. If it's an England-wide legislation that's impact, you should know about it. You should be aware of it, and you're not. And that's the beginning of the journey, communication.
Makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. Well, I look forward to seeing the comments that come out around it.
Well, yeah.
So, Andy, final question for me. What is one thing that Beth and I can do following our conversation today to be better at recycling and help the mission?
Take a little bit of time when you're deciding which bin to go in, basically. So when you've got that waste product in your hand that you are then saying that's waste, I don't want it anymore, I've no need for it anymore, you look and you make a conscious decision rather than just walking past, seeing a hole in the top of the bin and throwing it in there. It can be that simple. Just look at what you have in your hand, take a moment, put it in the right bin. If everyone did that, problem solved.
Yeah. Well, it's quite easy advice for us to take.
Yeah.
There's no reason for us not to do it.
I will start that today. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Andy, that's been really interesting. Thank you so much for coming and joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
That's it for today, folks. We'll see you next time. Thank you.